Hi, today I want to share some thoughts with you on the power of plural. Now, plural, as most of us know, just simply means more than one. And I think you're going to find out in the next 40 minutes or so that having more than one person in your life can help you tremendously. Let me share a silly story with you that I shared a few weeks ago. There was once a washerman who is a man who washes, or at least used to, wash other clothes for hire. He was raising two donkeys. And he first called donkey A, and the other one he called donkey B. Kept it pretty simple. Donkey A felt that he was more energetic and could do better than the other donkey. He always tried to get the washerman's attention by taking more of the load and walking as fast as he could in front of him. So, donkey B was just a normal average donkey. He tried as hard as he could, but he couldn't carry as much as donkey A or really impress the washerman by walking in front of him. So after a period of time, you see, the washerman began to put pressure on donkey B, but donkey B couldn't meet his expectations. Eventually, donkey B started getting punished, actually. So one day, donkey B was crying and asked donkey A to help. He said, "Dear friend, is it only the two of us? Why do we compete against each other? If we work together, we could carry an equal load at a normal speed." Donkey A became even more competitive after that. The next day, he boasted to the washerman that he could carry more and run faster than donkey B. And he did. The washerman, as expected, became even angrier and demanded that donkey B go even faster and punished him even when he couldn't keep up. Under the pressure, you see, donkey B collapsed in great fatigue and quietly passed away. As a result of the collapse, donkey A felt like he was on top of the world, having proved his superior skills and ability. But now he also had to carry the weights of donkey B, who had just passed away. For a short time, you see, donkey A was able to carry both loads, but he eventually became fatigued and weak. The washerman had no compassion on this once superior but now tired donkey. He yelled and demanded more, but as hard as the donkey tried, he couldn't come close to satisfying his demands. Finally, the day came when the washerman was tired of this fatigued and no good donkey now. He killed him and went searching for some other donkeys. The moral of the story is to recognize that regardless of how strong you think you are, you can't do it alone. It is important to work together. I know it's a crazy story. But I think you and I both know that sometimes we think we're all alone, and sometimes we don't really value the strengths of other people around us. In the Bible, in Exodus chapter number 18, Exodus chapter 18 shares a story about Moses, actually Moses' father-in-law. Now, Moses was a leader. He frankly ran from the role of leader for quite some time. But he was trying to handle everything on his own. So father-in-law stepped up in Exodus chapter 18, starting in verse number 17. But Moses' father-in-law, it said to him, "This isn't the right way to do this. It is too much work for you to do alone. You cannot do this job by yourself. It wears you out, and it makes the people tired too. Now listen to me," he says. "Let me give you some advice, and I pray God be with you. You should continue listening to the problems of the people. You should continue to speak to God about these things, and you should explain God's laws and teachings to the people and warn them not to break the laws. Tell them the right way to live and what they should do," he said. "But then you should also choose some people to be judges and leaders. Choose good people you can trust, people that respect God. Choose people who will not change their decisions for money. Make these people rulers over the people. There should be rulers over 1,000 people, 100 people, 50 people, and even over 10 people." So the father-in-law was trying to teach Moses that he needs to delegate his strength. My grandmother told me that one time, to delegate my strength, to manage my strength. Because you and I only have so much strength for a given day. The power of plural pronouns can influence people in a strange way. Now, that means we, that means us, that means instead of I and me, the power of we can get so much more done, sometimes in a negative way and sometimes in a positive way. In the Bible, over in Romans chapter 12, it says that even though there are a lot of people, we're only really one people. That is, if we work together, so much can be done if we focus on getting a specific job done at any given time. In fact, the actual text says, "Be kindly affectionate one to another with brotherly love and honor, giving preference to each other." And what does that mean? That means by treating people with the same love that you would treat a family member. In fact, there's a guy named Rick Renner said, in quotes, he kind of paraphrased this text. He says, "Love each other with the same love you have for your family." He said, in fact, you should love each other with the same love that is shared between two brothers. The value you place on each other should be so high that it makes you desire to those you love to excel, to achieve more in life, even if it means, listen, this is hard for some of us, even if it means that they excel and achieve more than you do. I know some of us are competitive. We want to be the top. We want to be number one. But serving other people is really, really more important than being the first all the time. You and I have an opportunity to serve people. You and I have an opportunity to make a difference in people's lives. Over in Romans chapter 15, it says, this text says that we're supposed to admonish one another. Admonish means to lead someone from a false path into a true path by warning and teaching. How many times have you tried to give advice to people because they were headed down the wrong path and you knew that the path that they were headed down was absolutely going to shut them down? That word is admonish in the Bible. It talks about that word. That we're supposed to help people that are heading down the wrong path. Michael Rogers shared a very interesting story. A team of about 35 employees had come together for a team building event. They were young and bright and a very enthusiastic team. However, one big problem his team had was they wouldn't share information or solutions with each other. So the leader felt that they were so focused on themselves and not enough on the team. So this leader, she started off with a fun team activity that would allow her to teach the importance of each team member working together and sharing more. She brought the team into a cafeteria, and all the tables and chairs had been stacked and put away and placed around the room, and there were more decorations and hundreds of different colored balloons. Everyone was excited, but not sure what it was all about. So in the center of the room was a big box of balloons that had not been blown up yet. So the team leader asked each person to pick a balloon, blow it up, and write their name on it. But they were instructed to be careful because the balloon would pop. So a few balloons did indeed pop, and those members of the team were given another chance, but they were told if the balloon popped again, they were out of the game. So about 30 team members were able to get their balloon blown up without it popping. So those 30 they went through the game. So 5 minutes later, the leader brought them back. They took some people out and then brought them back in. The leader brought them back into the room and announced that their next challenge was to find the balloon that they had left behind with their name on it, along with the other hundreds of balloons that were scattered in the whole cafeteria. So they blew up the balloons, put their name on it, left the room, came back in. So she warned them, however, to be very careful and not to pop any of the balloons. If they did, they would be disqualified. So while being very careful, they also were trying to go as quickly as they could, so each team member looked for the balloon with their name on it. And after 15 minutes, not one single person was able to find the balloon with their name on it. So the team was told that the second round of the game was over and they were moving into the third round. So in this next round, the leader told the team members to find any balloon in the room with a name on it and give it to the person whose name was on it. Within just a couple minutes, every member of the team had their balloon with their name on it. So the team leader made the following point, quote, "Listen, we are much more efficient when we are willing to share with each other." Let me share it again. We are much more efficient when we are willing to share with each other. And we are better problem solvers when we are working together, not individually. I think so many of us are tempted to try to achieve, to try to do something extraordinary all alone. If you know context about history and about people who've gotten really good things done, they did it through collaboration. They did it through teamwork and synergy that was able to push past some of the discouragements that life seems to face. Over in Romans 15 in the Bible, a message text or context of this says this, starting in verse 1. Those of us who are strong and able in faith need to step in and lend a hand to those who falter. I'm in Romans chapter 15. And not to just do what is most convenient. It says strength is for service, not status. Let me say it again. Strength is for service, not status. He says each of us needs to look after the good of the people around us, asking ourselves, how can I help? That's exactly what Jesus did. He didn't make it easy for himself by avoiding people's problems, but waded right in and helped them. I took on the troubles of the troubled, this paraphrase says, is the way Scripture puts it. Even as it was written a long time ago, you can be sure that it's written for us too. It says God wants us to have a combination of things, to be steady, to be warm, to enable us to influence people around us. Group dynamics, you see, have an incredible power on people. How many times haven't you been in a room or in a stadium or an event or a meeting when more than one person is fired up? When the whole room is just on fire, they're just absolutely lit up with excitement. Doesn't that kind of bleed over onto you too? Again, the text today is the power of plural, the power of more than one. You and I have a chance to be part of a group, and sometimes we have opportunities to build groups. Over in Ecclesiastes chapter 4 in the Bible, it says two are better than one because they have a good return on their toil. Have you ever been partnered with somebody that had a project to do, that if you really work together, really together, you got so much more done when you work together than two individuals? That's what I'm talking about here today, the power of plural. It goes on to say in Ecclesiastes that if one falls, one will lift up the other. It's really important for you to understand that you should not try to go through life by yourself. That you and I have to, if you will, recruit a team of people around us that can help push us forward to do the things that we need to do every single day. There's also another side, if you will, another byproduct of the power of plural. And that means that sometimes that our beliefs can be so tightly held in place that we're not going to budge on those beliefs sometimes. There was a study that was done years ago about a group of people that were invited into a group, and they were given just a simple test to tell which line on a series of lines was the longer line. Well, they were all told to not tell the truth in this study. They were told to say that another line or a shorter line was actually the longer line. So they brought in this other person that was not coached like the group. So in time, this happened over and over and over again, that this newbie who came into this group didn't know that the others were told to lie, and they in time were convinced that they must have been wrong, that the group must have been right. So there's a negative side of that too. That sometimes you and I need to, which goes kind of counter to what I'm talking about here today a little bit, to stand up and do the extraordinary, to be different, to set the pace, even though the crowd is going another way. And then you start a group. You start and understand the power of plural in your own life. Over in Acts chapter 2 in the Bible, it tells about these group of Christians, these new believers that were relatively new in the faith. And it talks about, in fact, there was about 120 of them. And they were praying in this upper room, again, 2,000 plus years back. And some very interesting things happened to them, that the Holy Spirit came down upon them, and they started to speak in languages and dialects that they did not understand prior to going into that room because they were united. How many times haven't you seen throughout history and seen in politics that when people are united, things get done in a much, much bigger way? You see, groups breed conformity. Think about that. Groups breed conformity. Over in Genesis 11, there's another negative side of being plural. Now, in this text, it talks about how these group of people came together to build this tower to God. And God got very unhappy about it. So the story says that they were all speaking, in fact, over in verse 6, it says that they were speaking the same language in this chapter, in the first book of the Bible. It says, quote, "Behold, they are all one people," listen, "for they all have the same language." Listen, they're one people and they have the same language. And this is what they began to do. And now nothing, listen to this, "and now nothing which they purpose to do will be impossible for them." Now let me broaden that concept out just a bit here. When you and I and others speak the same language, when you and I have the same mindset, when you and I have the same ideas, when you and I have the same goals and plans, then guess what happens? Nothing is impossible. So in verse 7 it says, "Come, let us go down and therefore confuse the language so that they will not understand another one's speech." So I know you and I have maybe family members in your household or extended family that don't speak the same language that you do. And then what happens? Confusion happens. Unity does not happen when we're not speaking the same language. So for us, you and I, and people in your life and my life who want unity, then we all need to be on the same page. Hence the power of plural. So what happens if there's confusion in speech with those that are on the same team? I can remember when we were adopting our kids overseas. We were in the courtroom and the judge was at the front of the room and I was here, our translator was here, and my wife was here, and the judge was asking us questions and the translator was translating to us what the judge was saying, so we had to both listen out of respect to the judge, which we didn't have a clue what she was saying, and listen to the translator at the same time. The translator would take our English and translate it to Russian. It was crazy confusing because we weren't speaking the same language. How many times haven't you been in an office or in a relationship or in some sort of situation where you weren't speaking the same language, so nothing was getting done? It's so important for us to speak the same language if we want to get stuff done. We see it in politics all the time. If we're not speaking the same language, nothing's going to get done consistently. Way back in 1991, a guy named Chuck Swindoll, he shared a really cool example of this concept of the power of plural. He said, "It's those stately geese I find especially impressive, winging their way to a warmer climate, and they would cover thousands of miles before reaching their destination. Have you ever studied why they fly as they do?" He said, "It's fascinating to read what has been and what they were able to do after all these times. They kind of discovered this flight pattern, if you will." He said, number one, those in front, listen, rotate their leadership. Think about that a minute. Those in front rotate their leadership. When one lead goose gets tired, it changes places with one in the wing and in the V formation, and another one flies point, which is the one up front. Number two, he said, by flying as they do, the members of the flock create an upward air current for one another. Each flap of the wings literally creates an uplift for the bird immediately following. One author states that flying in a V formation, the whole flock, listen, gets 71% greater flying range than if each goose flown on its own. Think about that a minute. Again, today we're still talking about the power of plural. Number three. When one goose gets sick or wounded, two fall out of formation with it and follow it down to help and protect it. They stay with the struggler until it's able to fly again. And then finally, number four, Chuck Swindoll says, the geese in the rear of the formation are the ones, I love this, who do the honking. I suppose it's their way of announcing that they're following, and all that's announcing they're following is to make sure that the ones up front keep flying, to keep moving forward. For sure, he says, the repeated honks encourage those in front to stay at it. As I think about this, he says, one lesson stands out above all others. It is the natural instinct, listen, It is the natural instinct of geese to work together. Whether it's rotating, flapping, helping, or simply honking. The flock's in it together, which enables them to accomplish what they set out to do. So I wonder if you and I would understand the power of plural in our lives. Because so many times when you get hit in the face over and over and over again with discouragement and frustration, that you think that you are the only one that is going through it. I've been there for a short time in my life that I felt that like I was the only one going through difficulty in my life. Where there is division, where there is mistrust, when there's broken relationships, there cannot be the power of plural. There has to be trust. There's a book out called The Power of Trust. It is so critical that you have to have trust in your life if you want to have a relationship and an atmosphere in your life, that you have teams of people around you, if you will, honking you on. And you also being part of a group where you're honking others on. It's so critical if you want to keep moving forward in your life. So there's a connection, a power that happens when really people on either side of the fence work together. Imagine if people, Republicans and Democrats, blacks and whites, get together for one cause. Stuff can really happen that's extraordinary. There's a story that I read a while back that happened several years ago in the Paris Opera House. A famous singer had been contracted to sing, and ticket sales were booming. In fact, the night of the concert found the house packed, and every ticket was sold. The feeling of anticipation and excitement was in the air, and the house manager took the stage, swallowed hard, and said, quote, "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your enthusiastic support. I am afraid that due to illness, the man whom you've come to hear will not be performing tonight. However, we have found a suitable substitute you will probably appreciate." Well, the crowd groaned in disappointment and failed to hear the announcer mention the stand-in's name. The environment turned from excitement to frustration. The stand-in performer gave the performance everything he had. When he was finished, there was nothing but an uncomfortable silence. Silence completely went through the room. No one applauded. Suddenly from the balcony, a little boy stood up and shouted, "Daddy, I think you are wonderful." The crowd broke into thunderous applause. The story ends, we all need people in our lives who are willing to stand up once in a while and say, "I think you are wonderful." Not only are you sometimes on the stage, but also sometimes you're in the balcony and need to honk people on. And you need to surround yourself with people who cheer you on and encourage you and to keep you moving forward. I want to share another story from a book called Chicken Soup for the Soul. You may have heard it. It's called A Pebble in the Water. It was written by Sally O'Brien some years back. The events leading up to the proudest moment in my 28-year teaching career began on Monday, December 9th, 1990. Our troops were engaged in Desert Storm in Saudi Arabia, and I was in an after-school faculty meeting in the high school cafeteria. The computer coordinator told us about Project Desert Shield, created by former football great Walter Payton. She explained that he had chartered a plane for Sunday to fly to the Persian Gulf to personally deliver gifts and donated items from this area. We were asked to invite our students to sign Christmas cards and to write pen pal letters to cheer up soldiers during the holidays. As I was driving to school that Tuesday, I remembered spending Christmas in the Philippine Islands when I was in the Peace Corps in 1960s. I had received cookies from home, and what a difference they made. I had felt loved and cared for as I was so far away. When I asked each of my 5 classes that Tuesday was contribution day, or 50 cents, she got total support. They were very excited about it. As the day progressed and word spread about our cookie project, the National Honor Society volunteered to contribute paperbacks, books. Then the work program coordinator said her class would fill up Christmas stockings with candy. On Wednesday morning, I went to the main office and told the principal's secretary about my students raising money for cookies and what the other classes were doing. So I asked her if the administration would make a donation, and the principal agreed. And I was delighted that I could then send all these gifts out to the offices and the administration. So everybody was totally in on it, 100%. When I gave my class a running total, what we had collected, we decided that we were going to have over $150 to spend so we could purchase more cookies, more than cookies. We compiled a list of items that family members were encouraged to send overseas, and 3 students from each class volunteered to form a shopping committee. On Thursday, I went to the faculty lounge for lunch and enthusiastically shared the news of the school's environment, or of their involvement in Project Desert Shield. One listener said that sand insects were getting into packages sent overseas, and I suggested to call a popcorn company to see if they could donate empty metal containers. In addition to empty metal containers, the popcorn company offered to donate several cases of popcorn. So when I gave my daily report to the classes and told them the response of the popcorn company, you see, my students they started brainstorming about other ways they could help through maybe their parents' workplaces. By the end of the school day on Thursday, we collected a whopping $260, armed with an official letter telling them about the school's involvement in Project Desert Shield. Our shopping committee members left to make their purchases. When I got to my classroom on Friday morning, the story says, I was surprised to find that the custodians unloading flats of boxes. The 15 committee members came in one by one with their purchases. They were just so excited. They told me that they had difficulty paying for anything because the merchants wanted to make donations. We were so overwhelmed with boxes and cases, we couldn't fit them all into the school van. The principal had to call central administration and request a truck. We filled that truck with over $2,000 of products. Then we gathered all the back of the truck and a picture with a banner that read, Elk Grove Cares, Merry Christmas. I went back to my empty classroom where a few hours before the room had been filled with animated and purposeful students. I thought how fulfilled this project had been and how much support and encouragement I had received. And then I remember I sitting there in the silence thinking, okay, God, I get it. I know now why I'm in the classroom. The following Monday, I asked each of my students to write a paragraph on Project Desert Shield. Some wrote that they grew up. A few mentioned how one person can make a difference, and one said that it was like the ripples that form when you throw a pebble in the water. But the response that touched me the most was one that written by one of my students. Quote, Mrs. O'Brien, I was ready to kill myself this week. Then I got on the committee and saw I was accepted by others. Thank you. That story was written, by the way, by Sally O'Brien. So I end today with some words of advice, and this is really, these are some, I can't remember the author who came up with it, but it's called A Short Course in Human Relations. We're still talking about the power of plural. It says, number 1, the 6 most important words. Write it down. I admit I was wrong. The 5 most important words. You did a great job. The 4 most important words. What do you think? The 3 most important words. Could you please? The 2 most important words. I know you know what these might be. The 2 most important words. Thank you. And the most important word is we. The least most important word is I. So I end today. There is power in plural. Don't try life by yourself. Thank you.